call came on a Wednesday evening while I was reviewing quarterly reports at my desk. When her best friend's name flashed on my phone, I almost didn't answer. We barely spoke unless it was about coordinating surprise parties or group dinners. But something told me to pick up. "Hey, I hope you don't mind me calling directly," she said, her voice carrying that awkward tone people use when they're about to cross a line. "I've been thinking about your situation with your wife, and I wanted to help." I set down my pen. "What situation?" "Oh, you know, how she's been reconsidering the marriage and all that. Look, I've been her friend for 15 years, and I think I know what might turn things around for you too." She paused, clearly expecting me to jump in with gratitude. Maybe a new car for her birthday would help? Something nice, you know? She's been hinting that grand gestures might make her feel more valued in the relationship. The words hit me like cold water. I leaned back in my chair, processing what I'd just heard. My wife had been reconsidering the marriage, and somehow her best friend knew about it before I did. More importantly, the solution being pitched was a car purchase. "I appreciate you reaching out," I said carefully, "but I'm not sure I follow. She hasn't mentioned reconsidering anything to me." There was a brief silence. Then came the backpedaling. "Oh well, you know how women talk. Maybe I misunderstood. But the car thing, that's definitely something she's mentioned. She saw this BMW at the dealership last weekend and couldn't stop talking about it." After hanging up, I sat there staring at my phone. The pieces started falling into place with uncomfortable clarity. 3 months ago, my wife had started these conversations about where we were heading as a couple. Nothing direct, just vague statements about feeling unappreciated, about how some husbands really showed their wives they cared through meaningful actions. Then came the birthday hints. Subtle at first, then increasingly obvious. Comments about how her friend's husband bought her a Lexus for no reason at all. How romantic gestures keep marriages alive. How she'd seen the perfect car and dreamed about driving it. I walked to the kitchen where she was meal prepping for the week, looking completely normal. She glanced up with a smile that now seemed different somehow. "Who was on the phone?" she asked. "Work stuff," I replied, studying her expression. She nodded and went back to portioning out salads, completely unaware that her entire strategy had just been exposed. That night, lying in bed while she scrolled through her phone beside me, I replayed every conversation from the past few months. The pattern was clear as day. The timing of her doubts about our marriage coincided perfectly with her birthday approaching. Her sudden interest in discussing our relationship always seemed to circle back to how couples express love through significant purchases. She wasn't reconsidering our marriage because of genuine issues. She was manufacturing a crisis to justify an expensive demand. The best friend had revealed the whole game plan without realizing it. I got up quietly and went to my home office. Opening my laptop, I logged into our joint savings account and stared at the balance. $18,000 we'd accumulated over 2 years of careful budgeting and saving. Money earmarked for home improvements, emergency funds, and future plans. Money she was planning to manipulate me into spending on a car by threatening our marriage. I opened a new browser tab and started researching individual banking accounts. By 2 a.m., I had a complete plan mapped out. First thing Thursday morning, I would transfer every dollar from our joint account into a new personal account. Not because I wanted to steal from her, but because I refused to be extorted. The next morning, she kissed me goodbye like nothing had happened. "Have a good day, honey. Love you. Love you too," I replied, knowing that by lunchtime, everything would be set in motion. At 9 a.m. sharp, I walked into the bank. The transfer took 20 minutes to process. $18,000 moved from our money to my money, legally and completely justified given what I now understood was happening. But that was just step one. While she was at work, probably texting her friend about how the car conversation was going to go, I was already 3 moves ahead of her entire scheme. The real question wasn't whether she'd try to withdraw money for her gift. The question was how she'd react when she discovered that her manipulation tactics had consequences she never saw coming. By Thursday afternoon, I had an appointment scheduled with a family law attorney for Friday morning. Not because I wanted a divorce, but because I needed to understand my legal position when someone uses emotional manipulation to extract money from a marriage. The lawyer's office was downtown, nothing fancy, just competent and professional. When I explained the situation, he leaned back in his chair and nodded knowingly. "Emotional extortion in marriage is more common than people think," he said, taking notes. The fact that she's using a third party to communicate threats about reconsidering the marriage while simultaneously pushing for expensive purchases creates a clear pattern of financial manipulation. He explained that moving the joint savings wasn't just legal, it was smart. Joint accounts give both parties equal access, which means equal responsibility to protect those assets from misuse. If someone's threatening the stability of the marriage unless they receive expensive gifts, that's grounds for protective financial measures. I walked out with a folder full of documents and a clear strategy. Legal separation papers were being prepared, not because I necessarily wanted to end the marriage, but because I needed formal protection against ongoing financial manipulation. If she wanted to threaten our relationship over money, I'd make those threats have real consequences. Meanwhile, she was completely oblivious. Thursday night, she made my favorite dinner and spent the evening talking about weekend plans. Normal conversation, normal behavior, except now I could see through it. Every casual mention of things we should do together or ways to strengthen our relationship felt calculated. Friday evening, she brought up the car again, but with a different approach. I've been thinking about what I really want for my birthday, she said, curled up next to me on the couch. And honestly, more than any material thing, I want to feel like we're solid, like we're building something together. We are building something together, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. I know, but sometimes I wonder if you realize how important it is to show that. Like, when couples make big decisions together, by meaningful things together, it creates this bond. There it was. The setup. The conversation was heading exactly where her friend said it would. What kind of meaningful things? I asked, playing along. Well, like that BMW I saw. I keep thinking about how it would feel to drive something we chose together. Something that represents your investment in us. Investment in us. Not a car she wanted, but an investment in our relationship that only I would be paying for. That's an interesting way to look at it, I said. How much was that car again? Her eyes lit up. Around $22,000. But we could put a big down payment from savings and finance the rest. It would show that we're planning for the future together. $22,000. $4,000 more than our entire savings account had contained before I moved it. She'd already calculated everything, probably had the financing figured out, and was presenting it as couples teamwork. Let me think about it over the weekend, I said. She kissed my cheek. That's all I ask. Just think about what it would mean for us. Saturday morning, while she was at her yoga class, I finalized the legal separation paperwork. The attorney had worked fast, understanding the urgency of the situation. The documents were clear and comprehensive, citing emotional manipulation and financial coercion as grounds for legal separation. But the key element was the restraining order on joint financial assets. Effective immediately upon filing, neither party could make major financial decisions or large withdrawals without court approval. Her birthday car plan would be impossible even if the money was still accessible. Sunday night, she escalated her approach. After dinner, she sat me down for what she called an important conversation about our future. I've been doing a lot of soul-searching lately, she began, her voice taking on a serious tone. And I realize I haven't been clear about what I need to feel secure in this marriage. I waited, curious to see how deep this performance would go. The truth is, I've been questioning whether we want the same things. Whether you're as committed to making this work as I am. She paused for effect. But then I think about how we could change that dynamic. How one meaningful gesture could shift everything. What kind of gesture? Something that shows you're willing to invest in my happiness. In our happiness. Something like that car we talked about. She reached for my hand. I know it seems like a lot, but think about what it represents. Your faith in us. The manipulation was so transparent now that I almost felt bad for her. She genuinely believed this strategy would work, that threatening our marriage would unlock my wallet. You're right, I said, surprising her. It would represent something significant. She squeezed my hand, thinking she'd won. It would represent that you're willing to hold our marriage hostage for material things, I continued. And that's definitely something I need to address. Her smile faded. That's not what I meant. No, but that's what you've been doing. The question is, what am I going to do about it? She tried to backtrack, to explain that I was misunderstanding her intentions, but I was done listening to the performance. Monday morning would bring clarity to the situation, whether she was ready for it or not. Monday morning arrived with her trying a completely different tactic. Instead of the subtle approach, she went straight for emotional warfare. I barely slept last night, she announced over breakfast, looking genuinely distressed. I kept thinking about our conversation yesterday, and I'm worried you don't understand how serious this is. I sipped my coffee and waited for the next act. I've been trying to communicate my needs, and you're treating it like I'm being manipulative. That hurts more than you know. Her voice cracked slightly. Maybe we need to consider counseling, or maybe we need space to figure out if this marriage is working. There it was. The nuclear option. Threaten the marriage directly if the subtle manipulation doesn't work. Space might be exactly what we need. I agreed, which clearly wasn't the response she expected. She stared at me for a moment, then shifted strategies again. Look, forget about the car. This isn't about material things anymore. This is about whether you care enough to fight for us. Fighting for us would involve buying you a car. Fighting for us would involve showing that my happiness matters to you, that you're willing to make sacrifices to keep us strong. The word choice was perfect. My sacrifices for her happiness. Not mutual sacrifices, not shared goals, but my financial sacrifice for her material desires disguised as relationship maintenance. Tuesday brought reinforcements. Her mother called me directly, which never happened unless someone was getting married or divorced. She's been talking to me about how disconnected you two have become, her mother said without preamble. I think you need to understand that women need to feel cherished, especially at milestone moments like birthdays. I absolutely agree, I replied. The question is whether cherishing someone means buying them expensive things when they threaten the marriage if you don't. Silence on the other end. Then, I think you're misunderstanding the situation. Am I? Because it sounds like she's told multiple people that she's reconsidering our marriage, and the solution everyone's suggesting involves me spending $22,000. The conversation ended quickly after that. Wednesday evening, she brought out the heavy artillery. When I came home from work, she was sitting at the kitchen table with printed emails, bank statements, and what looked like a budget spreadsheet. I've been thinking about our finances, she said, gesturing to the papers. We've been saving for 2 years, and for what? The money just sits there while our marriage struggles. I sat down across from her, genuinely curious about this new angle. Look at these numbers, she continued, sliding a sheet toward me. We spend money on routine things, utilities, groceries, but when was the last time we invested in something meaningful? Something that would make us both happy. The spreadsheet showed our monthly expenses, our savings rate, and prominently highlighted the car payment that would fit easily into our budget. This isn't just about wanting something, she said earnestly. This is about proving that we can make big decisions together, that we prioritize our relationship over just accumulating money. It was impressive, actually. She positioned my refusal to buy her a car as evidence that I didn't prioritize our relationship. Somehow, my financial responsibility had become relationship neglect. You've put a lot of thought into this, I observed. Because it matters. We matter. She leaned forward. I need to know you're willing to do something significant for us. Not because you have to, but because you want to. And if I'm not willing? The question hung in the air. She looked down at her hands, then back at me with what appeared to be genuine sadness. Then I think we need to seriously evaluate whether we want the same things from this marriage. There it was again. The threat disguised as relationship concern. Buy the car or face marriage problems. Thursday morning, I found a car brochure on my desk at home. Not just any brochure, but the specific BMW she wanted, with financing options highlighted and a sticky note that read, "Just thinking about possibilities." That afternoon, she texted me links to articles about keeping romance alive in marriage and how successful couples make big decisions together. Each article coincidentally emphasized the importance of grand gestures and shared major purchases. By Thursday evening, her best friend was texting me directly. "Hey, I hope my call helped you understand what she needs. She's been my friend forever, and I've never seen her question a relationship like this. Whatever you decide to do, just know it's really important." The coordination was flawless. Her mother, her best friend, the printed financial documents, the articles, the brochures. Every angle was covered. Every emotional pressure point was being pressed simultaneously. Friday night, she made reservations at an expensive restaurant, the kind of place we only went for anniversaries. Over dinner, she laid out her final presentation. "I want to be completely honest with you," she said, reaching across the table for my hand. "These past few months, I've been struggling with feeling like we're roommates instead of partners. like we're just going through the motions instead of building something amazing together. She paused to let that sink in. But I also realized that maybe I haven't been clear about what would change that feeling. What would make me feel like we're truly investing in each other? Another pause. The car represents that investment. Not just the money, but the decision to prioritize our happiness together. And if I don't see it that way, she looked directly into my eyes. Then I think we need to consider that maybe we're not compatible in the ways that matter most. The ultimatum was finally completely clear. Buy the car or lose the marriage. No more subtle hints. No more vague concerns about our relationship. Pure, simple extortion. I understand, I said calmly. You've made your position very clear. She smiled, thinking she'd finally broken through. So you'll consider it seriously? Oh, I'm way past considering. I've already made my decision. Her smile widened. She thought she'd won. She had no idea what Monday morning would bring. Monday morning, she practically bounced out of bed. Over breakfast, she was more animated than I'd seen her in months, talking about weekend plans and mentioning casually that she might stop by the bank later to check on something. I knew exactly what that something was. Sounds good, I said, finishing my coffee. I've got some errands to run today, too. She kissed me goodbye with genuine enthusiasm. Love you. Can't wait to talk tonight. At 10 a.m., I was sitting in my attorney's office, signing the final legal separation papers. The filing would be submitted within the hour, creating an immediate legal record of the financial manipulation and emotional extortion. At 11 a.m., my phone started buzzing. Text messages from her, increasingly frantic. Call me. Something's wrong with the bank account. Where are you? I need to talk to you right now. This isn't funny. Call me back. I waited until noon before responding. Just saw your messages. What's going on? She called immediately. Her voice was shaking. The money's gone. All of it. Someone emptied our savings account. That's terrible, I said calmly. Did you call the bank about fraud? It wasn't fraud. They said it was transferred to another account. An account I don't have access to. There was silence, then a whispered realization. You moved it. I moved my half of the money to protect it from unauthorized purchases. The bank can confirm that everything was done legally. Your half? That was our money. For our future. Our money that you were planning to spend on your car without discussing it with me first? That money. The silence stretched for several seconds. I wasn't going to just take it. I was going to ask you first. You were going to ask me after threatening to leave the marriage if I said no. That's not asking. That's extortion. She hung up. 30 minutes later, she was at my office. The receptionist called to let me know my wife was in the lobby, demanding to see me immediately. When she walked into my office, her face was a mixture of fury and panic. You can't do this, she said, closing the door behind her. You can't just steal our money because you're having some kind of paranoid episode. Sit down, I said, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. I'm not sitting down. I want to know where that money is, and I want access to it right now. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a manila folder. Before we discuss money, there's something else we need to address. I slid the legal separation papers across the desk. Her eyes widened as she read the header. What is this? Legal separation papers, filed this morning. Grounds include emotional manipulation and financial extortion within the marriage. She picked up the documents, scanning through them quickly. Financial extortion? Are you insane? Let's see. You told multiple people you were reconsidering our marriage. You coordinated with your mother and your best friend to pressure me into buying you a car. You created fake relationship crises to justify a $22,000 purchase. You presented ultimatums disguised as relationship concerns. I leaned back in my chair. That's textbook financial manipulation. I never threatened to leave you. You said if I didn't buy the car, it would prove we're incompatible in ways that matter most. You said you'd been questioning the marriage, and only a meaningful gesture would change that. Your exact words. She sat down heavily, the papers still in her hands. Those conversations were about us growing closer. About you showing that you care. Those conversations were about you using our marriage as leverage to get expensive things. And I have proof. I pulled out my phone and played a recording. Her voice filled the room. Then I think we need to consider that maybe we're not compatible in the ways that matter most. Her face went pale. You recorded our private conversations? I documented evidence of ongoing financial manipulation, which is now part of the legal record. She stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. This is crazy. You're destroying our marriage over a misunderstanding. I'm not destroying anything. I'm protecting myself from someone who thinks threatening divorce is a negotiation tactic for luxury purchases. She tried a different approach, her voice becoming softer. Honey, I think you've misinterpreted everything. I never meant to manipulate you. I was just trying to communicate what I needed. What you needed was my money. What you used was emotional blackmail. That's not true. I opened another folder on my desk. Your text to your best friend last Tuesday. Quote, I think the car strategy is working. He's finally taking the relationship concerns seriously. End quote. The blood drained from her face completely. Your mother's phone call to you Wednesday night. Quote, make sure he understands that women leave marriages where they don't feel valued. I have the phone records showing the timing of that call and your conversation with me an hour later about feeling undervalued. She couldn't speak. Your internet search history on my laptop Thursday morning. How to convince husband to make major purchase. What to do when spouse won't spend money on relationship. Signs of financial control in marriage. I closed the folders and looked directly at her. You coordinated a psychological campaign to extract money from me by threatening our marriage. That's not miscommunication. That's calculated manipulation. She sat there, completely exposed, all her strategies laid bare. The separation is filed. The money is protected. Your manipulation campaign is over. Finally, she found her voice. So what happens now? Now you decide whether you want to be married to me because you love me, or whether you want to be divorced because I won't buy you expensive things to prove that love. She stared at the papers in her hands, then at me, realizing that every move she'd made had been anticipated and countered. I need time to think, she said quietly. Take all the time you need. Just remember that thinking time doesn't include access to money you plan to extort from me. She left the office without another word, leaving the separation papers on my desk. The game was over, and she'd finally understood who'd been playing it better. By Tuesday morning, the counterattack began. She'd spent Monday night regrouping, and now she was coming at me from every possible angle. First, the tears. She was waiting in my driveway when I got home from work, eyes red and swollen. I've been thinking all day about what you said, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. And you're right. I got confused about what I needed versus what I wanted. I never meant to manipulate you. I unlocked the front door and walked inside, with her following close behind. The money, the car, none of that matters now, she continued. I just want us to work through this. We can go to counseling. We can start over. Start over by you dropping the manipulation tactics? Yes, completely. I see now how it looked from your perspective. I turned to face her. How it looked? It wasn't about perspective. You literally coordinated with other people to pressure me into a major purchase by threatening our marriage. The tears intensified. I know, and I'm so sorry. I was scared about us drifting apart, and I thought material things would somehow bridge that gap. It was stupid and wrong. It was a decent performance. If I hadn't spent the past week documenting every aspect of her campaign, I might have been moved by it. The legal separation stands, I said simply. The tears stopped. Just like that. Her expression shifted from remorseful to calculating. You're really going to throw away our entire marriage because of a misunderstanding? I'm protecting myself from someone who uses our marriage as a weapon when they want expensive things. Wednesday brought phase 2, anger and accusations. She called my office repeatedly, demanding I reverse the legal separation. When I wouldn't take her calls, she showed up at my workplace again, this time loud enough that security had to escort her out. Her voicemail messages became increasingly aggressive. You moved our money like a thief and filed legal papers like a coward. If you think I'm going to just accept this, you're wrong. Thursday morning, I found her in my kitchen when I came downstairs. She'd used her key to let herself in. We need to talk about this rationally, she said, sitting at the table with a cup of coffee like nothing had happened. We need to talk about you returning your key and respecting the legal separation. Legal separation over what? Over me wanting a birthday present? Over me expressing concerns about our relationship? I poured my own coffee and sat across from her. Over you conspiring with multiple people to emotionally manipulate me into a $22,000 purchase. Conspiracy? That's what you're calling conversations with friends and family. That's what I'm calling coordinated pressure from your mother, your best friend, and you, all targeting the same financial goal, using the same emotional leverage. She leaned forward. Prove it was coordinated. I pulled out my phone and showed her the timeline I'd created. Tuesday, March 15th. Your best friend calls me about relationship concerns and suggests a car purchase. Wednesday, March 16th. You bring up feeling unvalued in the marriage. Thursday, March 17th. Your mother calls me about cherishing you properly. Friday, March 18th. You present the car as the solution to our relationship problems. Her face tightened as I continued. Then the follow-up campaign. The brochures, the articles, the restaurant conversation, the coordinated texts. All designed to create artificial urgency around buying you a car. That doesn't prove conspiracy. That proves people who care about me were trying to help you manipulate me. And it worked so well that you got overconfident and tried to withdraw the money without even asking first. She stood up abruptly. You know what? You're right. I was going to buy the car. Because I'm tired of being married to someone who treats every purchase like a personal attack. I'm tired of walking on eggshells around your control issues. Control issues? Yes, control issues. You moved $18,000 without telling me. You filed legal papers without discussing it. You recorded private conversations without my consent. Who's really the manipulator here? It was a clever pivot. Turn my protective measures into controlling behavior. The manipulator is the person who threatened to leave the marriage unless they got expensive gifts, I replied calmly. I never threatened to leave. I played another recording from my phone. Her voice. Then I think we need to consider that maybe we're not compatible in the ways that matter most. She listened to herself, then shrugged. That's not a threat. That's an honest assessment of our relationship. An honest assessment that coincidentally required a $22,000 car to resolve. Friday brought the final phase, social warfare. Her mother called me at work. I don't know what you think you're accomplishing, but you're destroying a good woman over your own insecurities. Her best friend left a voicemail. She's devastated. All she wanted was to feel appreciated, and you've turned it into some kind of legal battle. By evening, she'd clearly been strategizing with her support network. I talked to a lawyer today, she announced when I got home. He says what you did with the money could be considered financial abuse. Moving joint assets without consultation is a serious legal issue. Good, I said. Then we'll have 2 lawyers involved who can review all the evidence of your manipulation campaign. What evidence? Your paranoid recordings of normal conversations. I went to my desk and pulled out a thick folder. Phone records showing the coordination between you, your mother, and your best friend. Your internet search history planning the manipulation strategy. Text messages between you and your friend discussing how the car strategy was working. Email chains about relationship leverage tactics. I spread the documents on the coffee table. Bank records showing you researched the exact financing needed for the BMW before ever mentioning relationship problems. Screenshots of your social media posts about knowing your worth and demanding better treatment that coincidentally started 3 weeks before your birthday. Her eyes widened as she saw the scope of documentation. And my personal favorite, I continued, pulling out a printed email, your message to your sister asking for advice on getting him to make a big purchase without it seeming like an ultimatum. She stared at the email, her face completely pale. That was sent 2 months ago, which means this entire campaign was planned from the beginning. The relationship concerns, the marriage doubts, the emotional appeals, all of it was calculated to extract money from me. She sank into the couch, staring at the evidence of her own manipulation spread across the table. Any lawyer who reviews this will see exactly what happened, I said. And any judge who sees it will understand why the legal separation was necessary. For the first time since this began, she had nothing to say. No explanations, no excuses, no counterattacks. She was completely, undeniably exposed, and she knew it. 6 weeks later, everything was finalized. The legal separation became official, with the court ruling that the financial manipulation constituted grounds for asset protection. I retained full control of the savings account, and she was required to return any shared credit cards. Her attempts to claim financial abuse backfired spectacularly when her own lawyer reviewed the evidence. He advised her to accept the separation terms rather than face a formal fraud investigation. The social fallout was immediate and brutal. Her sister called me to apologize after reading the email evidence. I had no idea she was planning something like this. I thought she was just venting about normal marriage stuff. Her best friend stopped returning her calls once she realized her own involvement was documented. Being exposed as a co-conspirator in emotional manipulation apparently wasn't great for her reputation. Even her mother backed away after my attorney sent her copies of the coordination evidence. I was just trying to help, she explained in a brief phone call. I didn't realize it was part of a larger scheme. The BMW dealership called her 3 times about financing, until she finally had to explain that the money situation had changed. That conversation apparently didn't go well. By the end of the second month, she'd moved out of our house into a small rental apartment. The deposit and first month's rent consumed most of her personal savings account. No more talk about meaningful purchases or relationship investments. She made one final attempt at reconciliation, showing up at a restaurant where she knew I'd be having lunch. She looked genuinely defeated, sitting across from me uninvited. "I want you to know I understand what I did wrong," she said quietly. "I got focused on the wrong things and used the wrong methods. But destroying our marriage over it seems extreme." "I didn't destroy our marriage," I replied. "I exposed what our marriage actually was. A relationship where you felt entitled to manipulate me financially whenever you wanted something expensive. It wasn't about entitlement. It was about feeling valued. Feeling valued by forcing me to prove love through purchases? That's not a marriage. That's a transaction." She had no response to that. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. She contested nothing, knowing that any courtroom battle would only expose more of her manipulation tactics publicly. I kept the house, the savings account, and most importantly, my self-respect. She kept her BMW dreams and her reputation as someone who tried to emotionally extort her husband. The money she'd planned to spend on her birthday car ended up covering my legal fees, with plenty left over. The irony wasn't lost on me. Her birthday came and went without celebration. She spent it alone in her apartment, probably wondering how a simple plan to get an expensive car had cost her an entire marriage. I spent it having dinner with my brother, who raised his glass in a toast to men who don't negotiate with emotional terrorists. The manipulation was over. The marriage was over. And I'd never been more certain that both outcomes were exactly right.